firing government workers. Usually they try and reduce the size of the government workers through attrition, which is you age out or you retire, right? You leave the job of your own volition. And that's how they reduce the numbers rather than actually firing people. But looks like the government's overspent to the point where they have to fire people. And 41 Chinese candidates in 2019, the election I ran in, yes, 41 of them were supported and 8 were elected according to Sam Cooper. And that's a pretty concerning state of affairs. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start with China because China is unbelievable. We're going to get to the port issue in just a minute, but China's the biggest story. And it's one that's, we're not talking about it very much. And it seems concerning that we're not talking about it very much, but there are very concerning influence and people in our government that seem to be working for not Canadians and not their constituents. Jason says, this is earth-shaking. He's responding to Sam Cooper. Cooper says, Beijing endorsed nomination of 41 candidates in Canada's 2019 election. I'm not one of them. I am not a winning Chinese anything, right? I didn't take any Chinese money as far as I know. Jason says, this is earth-shaking. Months ago, Sam said on my podcast that we could potentially have 50 members of parliament under influence of China. Now Sam has confirmed 41 candidates in Canada's 2019 election. That's just 2019. No word yet on 2021. This is a foreign coup. No question about it. It seems very concerning in that direction. Canada Proud is reporting the same. Leaked documents from a Chinese Communist Party front organization operating in Canada revealed a plot to get 41 pro-China candidates elected to parliament during the 2019 election. The document boasts a 20% success rate, indicating 8 candidates were elected MPs. So 8 candidates. Does that include Han Dong, or is that outside of the 8 candidates who were successful? Scary stuff. So here is this guy. He's I don't know if this is Mark or I don't think this guy's name is Mark. He is highlighting Jagmeet Singh ripping up the supply and confidence agreement and the interesting situation being put before, the Conservatives, anybody who wants to bring down this government, because Jagmeet Singh won't support a confidence vote for the Liberals. So says he, especially one on forcing workers back to work without a collective bargaining agreement, right? And so Mark says Jagmeet Singh will take down this government if they force port workers back to work. Today, the Liberals announced binding arbitration requiring workers back to work. Is Jagmeet Singh a man of his words? So I don't know, like the Bloc Québécois wants to bring down the government, the Conservatives want to bring down the government, and now Jagmeet Singh has been given the opportunity to bring down this government. Now, will the Conservatives vote no to forcing the dock workers back to work and having some economic hardship but bringing down the government immediately? Or will they vote yes, put the dock workers back to work and avoid that economic hardship, right? And so the Conservatives are worried. Now, that's only if it's a confidence vote. Is it a confidence vote? I don't know. So we'll see. This guy is talking about this. He says, will this happen? Here we go.
Notified the Prime Minister that I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement. Canadians are fighting a battle for the future of the middle class. Justin Trudeau has proven again and again he will always cave to corporate greed. The Liberals have let people down. They don't deserve another chance.
Now that the supply and confidence agreement is ripped up into smithereens, the only thing else that Jagmeet Singh has is to take down this government. Let's take a look at the Liberal press conference that they just released.
Well, we'll look at it on my show here, but here is Brittany. She says, happening now, federal government has ordered back to work legislation for all 3 closed ports in Canada. Keep in mind, Jagmeet Singh said he would force a non-confidence if the Liberals stepped on unions' toes. Will we get a snap election, or will Singh sell out again? Right? So if Jagmeet Singh doesn't force a confidence vote, or if Justin Trudeau brings this up for a vote and it's not there's no confidence or anything attached to it, that'll be interesting to watch how this whole thing plays out, right? Because Jagmeet Singh has said some things, and now it's time to pay the piper. And do you think he's going to pay the piper? Here's Rex, and he's highlighting this. Holly Doan is highlighting this as well. Labor disputes are economic self-destruction, says Labor Minister. I've got the video in just a minute. For the 4th time in 3 months, Stephen McKinnon forces transport unions into binding arbitration without Parliament's consent. And Rex says, who knew Trudeau had a majority government? very nimble, this majority government, right? And True North says Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon defends the Trudeau government's decision to force an end to the BC and Quebec pork strikes. Here is this back and forth.
This is the second time now in 1 year that you've issued binding arbitration. You said that this might prompt some debate. Are you concerned at all about the precedent you're setting with regards to interviewing in the collective bargaining process?
It's certainly not something I take lightly. My belief and the government's belief in collective bargaining and in the fact that collective agreements that are reached at the bargaining table are the most durable agreements it is possible to conclude, that has not changed. However, when mediators, who are among, it should be said, the best in the world, inform me in 3 different circumstances that we are at a total impasse and the way forward is not clear, the duration of the disputes is not clear, and there is real economic, health, and other risks posed to Canadians, then that I take that responsibility extremely seriously. And Canadians, as I said, have limited tolerance right now for economic self-harm.
Economic self-harm, right? Yeah, we're doing it to ourselves. And here is what the Montreal port workers just rejected. How much do you make a year? Contrarian says unions are destroying Canada and ripping off taxpayers. Family doctors barely make this much. Is this not insane? The final offer included a cumulative salary increase of more than 20% over 6 years, retroactive to the beginning of 2024, which the MEA noted would mean the average compensation for dock workers would equate to more than $200,000 a year Canadian, $143,790 a year US dollars, and would also apply to the current pension plan and benefits. So that's pretty crazy, right? It is not good, but we'll see how this whole thing happens. This is a quick aside on the ports. What's going on in the ports and having the ports shut down is concerning, but people are at the ports and hearing screaming from container ships. Weird. Here's a quick video on that.
Fuck that port! There's people screaming there every night. I've heard it for myself. The city's trying to cover it up, trying to get everybody out of here because they know there's people in those fucking bins.
So there you go. Who knows? She sounds very sure, very certain. Let's talk about the invasion ongoing in Canada and across the West, indeed. Eva is responding to Ian. Ian is highlighting this happening in Italy. Giorgia Meloni's government in Italy will not be allowed to deport illegal aliens, according to judges who just ruled against her decision. They cited how Egypt has a poor human rights record, and therefore sending illegals from Egypt back to their home country would potentially violate their human rights. So it cannot be done. Italy's borders will remain open, and the new Europeans will be allowed to flood both Italy and Europe forevermore. So, cool. And that's what they're going to try and do to Trump, by the way. We're going to talk about Trump shortly. Eva says, everywhere in Europe, we're dealing with these types of far-left activists in our judiciary system who think that they're gods, and because they wear a toga and have a law degree, are somehow above the will of the people. We need to end this political lawfare. Yep. And Elon Musk is responding to the same thing. This is unacceptable. Do the people of Italy live in a democracy, or does the unelected autocracy make the decisions? And well, we'll see. But right now it seems the unelected autocracy is making the decisions. No Apology says, what are we doing and why are we so hell-bent on rapidly destroying our country? Son of a Bench says, Ottawa is planning to build a welcoming center for asylum seekers near the Nepen Sportplex. Instead of stopping those being deported by Trump's policies, the Canadian government is building a structure with private living spaces, kitchens, washrooms, and communal areas. So this is communism built on our tax dollars. It means it's bad, right? Welcome to Canada Guide advises foreigners to be prepared to use homeless shelters. Search online for information about emergency housing shelters near you. So welcome to the Nepen Sporting Complex. Here's your map, and on the back is the locations of the nearest food banks. You're welcome. Welcome to Canada. Yay. Is this a good idea? Like, why would we do this to people? It's absolutely insane. Here's National Post. 4 in 5 newcomers are coming to Canada relying on food banks. Toronto report finds. Right? I was joking about having the food bank maps to the food bank on the back, but I mean, maybe they are giving those out. That's pretty crazy. Use homeless shelters and food banks, and that's how you'll live in Canada? Why are we importing people who need to access these kind of things? And why are we building sports complex centers or shelters for homeless people with kitchens, et cetera, when they're not Canada's responsibility and they shouldn't be? Here's Alberta Plummer. He says, wow, this is crazy. Employers can get 50% of their wages subsidized for up to 4 years. The federal wage subsidy program in Canada for foreign workers refers to the Temporary Foreign Workers Program wage subsidy. This program provides financial assistance to employers who hire temporary foreign workers. Here are key details. 1, purpose to help Canadian employers offset labor costs when hiring temporary foreign workers. Eligibility, employers must demonstrate they cannot find Canadian citizens or permanent residents for the job and must meet program requirements. Wage subsidy varies depending on location, industry, and job type. Typically 50% of wages up to a maximum. Application, employers apply through Service Canada. Duration, subsidy usually lasts for the duration of the work permit up to 4 years. Some provincial and territorial governments offer additional wage subsidy programs for foreign workers. These programs may have different eligibility criteria and benefits. So there you go. That's interesting, right? So Yaza. And I mean, like, most of the people who are coming here are relying on food banks. Are they getting jobs that have wage subsidy, or are they just using the food bank and living in government housing? Right? Viral news says, breaking, I was told by a source at a migrant shelter that buses are pulling up at certain times of the hour and picking up migrants and driving them to Canada. I'm being told a majority of the migrants are leaving are from Venezuela. So be careful of your apartment complexes, everyone. You may be paying Venezuelans rent soon. Here is Ryan. He says, who thought this was a good idea? A flag-raising ceremony for Palestine outside of City Hall in Regina. What the actual heck is happening to our country? That's being invaded. We're being invaded. And we're paying for the invasion, by the way. And we're funding the invaders. Polyev says, why is Canada's immigration system so broken? Trudeau appointed 2 incompetent immigration ministers back to back. Sean Fraser lost track of 1 million migrants who entered Canada. And Mark Miller granted citizenship to an alleged ISIS terrorist. They can't fix what they broke. I'm not sure that, like, the Conservatives can fix what these guys broke either. I don't think they want to. It doesn't seem like they want to. So I hope I'm wrong about that, but it doesn't seem like the Conservatives are, on our side, right? They're not our guys. Mr. Surveillance says NBC is reporting India names Canada Border Services official in terror case. We don't just hire Sikh terrorists, we DEI them into positions of power within the country's 2 largest police forces, the CBSA and the RCMP, who then defend them because they'd otherwise look like fools. Yep. Here is CNBC is reporting what India is reporting and says India names Canada Border Police official in terror case. Key details here, but not in Canadian media, and just in this media. And it says, amid strained diplomatic relations between India and Canada over Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing, the name of a Canadian Border Service Agency, CBSA official, has come up in the list of fugitive terrorists that New Delhi wants to be deported from Canada. According to reports, Sandeep Singh Sidhu is employed with CBSA. He's allegedly a member of the banned International Sikh Youth Federation. His name has been added to the list of fugitive terrorists over his alleged involvement in promoting terrorist activities in Punjab. Sidhu is reportedly in touch with Lakbir Singh Road, a Pakistani-based Khalistani terrorist, as well as other operatives of Pakistan's ISIS, to execute the killing of Balwinder Singh Sidhu in the Tam Tarin district of Punjab in 2020. Sandhu is well known for his fight against the Khalistani terrorists during the decade-long militancy in the state in the 1980s, blah, 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 blah. So maybe they could just release all the names of people who are terrorists operating in official positions in Canada. That'd be super helpful. India, right? Our CSIS guys can't leak much more, right? So give us a hand here. Let's move on and talk about our grab bag of governance. And there's some Remembrance Day cleanup to do. And this is embarrassing, right? Like, this is our military. It's very, very cringy, very cringy. I was in cadets, and I would say that if I marched this poorly, I would be banished to do remedial drill while everybody else got to have fun playing with weapons, right? Like I'd be forced to march around and to do it right before I got to have any fun, right? And so this is like watching the remedial drill guys, but this is the Edmonton presentation for Remembrance Day. Weird. Here we go. Sloppy. You don't see. There was mismatching of the swinging of the arms. They're out of time. They're stepping at the different times. It looks they're not in line properly. Like they're not in a proper row. It looks just awful. Like it looks sloppy. I don't have to explain it. I'm just trying to explain it for the people who are listening. But there are just jaw-dropping lapses in ability, and like if you put a battalion of Chinese people or like Chinese army or US military. I mean, US military is kind of the gold standard, right? But if you put anybody else against these guys, I would not bet on Canada for winning a marching competition at this point in time, right? Like not even a little tiny bit. And that's supposed to be our Remembrance Day presentation and like in Edmonton? Give me a break. Wow. Stacey is responding to the National Post. National Post says Ontario schools played Palestinian protest song in Arabic as its Remembrance Day music, and Stacey says, let's name and shame them. Enough. Principal Aaron Hobbs defended the selection during one of those meetings, saying it was chosen to bring diversity and inclusion to Remembrance Day that is usually only about, quote, a white guy who has done something related to the military. So this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, clearly, and is infected with communism, the diversity and equity inclusion brand communism, right? That's all that's happened here. He's clearly infected with communism and he doesn't see it, I guess. Pierre Poilievre is responding to this. He says, what an absolute disgrace that so many woke activists and authorities used Remembrance Day to push their divisive and radical causes, denigrating our history and the brave military members who sacrificed for it. We are a proud country with a proud history, and everyone who lives here should be grateful to call Canada home. So, there's terrorism on our streets, and this is a teenager who is being charged, and no names, etc., etc. They talked to his dad, and well, we'll watch. Here we go.
Sources had told Global News that the target was the Jewish community and that the teen was ideologically motivated. Sources say an RCMP tactical team was present for the arrest, and so were officers from the chemical, biological, nuclear, and high explosives team, over concerns about what the teen may have in his possession. The young man's father spoke with Global News outside the courthouse where his son had appeared on Saturday morning. He said the boy is in grade 10 and that he had been concerned about religious extremists trying to radicalize his son.
And I warned him many times, me and his mother, stay away from, extremists or something. We never had this in the family. We don't have, but it seems, I think he's minor, he's 15 years old. I think they try to use him, and they stay in some people, that's what I think. Some extremists, they try to use him. He's kind of naive. He never used violence, nothing, I'm surprised.
Two sources told Global News that someone affiliated with ISIS may have been involved in trying to direct the teen. The teen's father told us that he and the boy's mother had tried to set up counseling with an imam at a local mosque. It's unclear if that ever went through.
Did the imam suggest maybe bombing people, or no? That's not an avenue of exploration. Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, we don't know how he was radicalized. No, we looked for help at the local mosque, and fast forward, now he's arrested for terrorism. Huh. No, we've never had any experience with this before. Okay, sure, gotcha. Right. Ryan says, this is not good. Arif Varini says, with the 3 announced today, I have now appointed 172 judges in my term as minister. 800 judges have been appointed by our government since 2015, improving the accessibility, efficiency, and fairness of our justice system. I will be sure to keep this historic pace going. And the problem with him is he's pushing forward internet censorship bills and thinking that it is okay to undermine our basic rights when he wants to, and he's the one appointing judges. And so his judgment is not very good, and people are concerned about that, and I would agree. Here's Jason, and Jason says, hey, Pierre Poilievre, you said you would remove any member of the CPC that has ties to the WEF. You missed one or lied. Here's a new slogan you could adopt. Tell the truth. Michelle Rempel-Gardner is certainly a WEF global leader, and in 2018 she was very open about it, and that tweet is still active. She says, I'm a young global leader with the WEF. I've learned a lot here. Professional development coupled with affecting positive change in the world and for my country. And Dr. Virginia J. Hobson says, hey, Jason, here's more. John Baird, Andrew Scheer, Tony Clement, Tim Uppel, Melissa Lanceman, all attended Davos more than once, including the Bohemian Grove, Stephen Harper, who endorsed Pierre Poilievre. Yep. So that's all a little bit too convenient, right? It's all very, very tightly related people, and they're all doing the same stuff. It's wild. Canada Proud says former BC NDP Premier John Horgan dies at 65 after a 3rd battle with cancer. Wow, 65 years old. Doesn't that seem young? Isn't that young? Don't we have, well, Randy Hillier highlights how long people used to live in Canada. Our expected age, or I can't remember the name. There's a term that's used for that, but I'm blanking on it right now. Anyway, Randy Hillier says, former BC Premier Horgan, who exalted and mandated crazy ideas of masking, jabbing, isolation, and lockdowns to remain healthy, has died at age 65. After taking his own health advice, he became ill with cancer and resigned as Premier. Canadians prior to COVID had an average life expectancy, that's the word, of 81 years. I suspect that few of the COVID premiers or politicians will come close to reaching that average. My deepest condolences to all those who are falling victim from following the expert advice and mandates, and I am truly sorry that we allowed fear to rule Canada during that time. Hopefully, good lessons will eventually be learned from this dark era in Canadian history. Fingers crossed. It's a dark era in human history. I think it's not just Canadian, that's for sure. They used rubber bullets in Australia. Drew says Alberta to cover hike, 39% hike in RCMP costs to rural municipalities for a year. The Calgary Herald. Instead, Drew says, let's immediately begin the formulation of our own Alberta Police Service. That'd be nice. That'd be a good idea. I think Alberta would be served by that. The RCMP seem incompetent and corrupt. Shockingly incompetent and corrupt. Excuse me, I don't mean to understate it. Trump. Let's talk about Trump. Gov.exe is reminding us just how much Trump really doesn't like Justin Trudeau, and I think it's worth remembering before we go through what Trump is doing. Here we go.
Mr. President, Susan Lee from Fox Business. Did you reject a one-on-one meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Yeah, I did.
Why?
Because his tariffs are too high and he doesn't seem to want to move, and I've told him forget about it. And frankly, we're very unhappy with the negotiations and the negotiating style of Canada. We don't like their representative very much. I love Canada, by the way.
Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night?
Well, he's two-faced. You know, they put out a document. I don't know if you saw it. They didn't want me to see it, but we found it. Perhaps they were trying to show the power they have. It's close to $100 billion a year loss with Canada. We finished the meeting. Really, everybody was happy. I left it. It was very friendly. When I got onto the plane, I think that Justin probably didn't know that Air Force One has about 20 televisions. And I see the television, and he's giving a news conference about how he will not be pushed around by the United States. And I say, push him around. We just shook hands.
Mr. President.
Two-faced, right? Justin Trudeau's duplicitous, two-faced. Cat Churt is highlighting this. Trump is assigning all of his cabinet positions and putting together his team to make America great again for the last 4 years, or for the next 4 years. And Cat Churt highlights all of the previous Democrat picks, right? So the crazy health secretary who's a man pretending to be a woman, and the other guy who likes to steal people's luggage and dress up in the most offensive outfits that he could possibly find, and Pete Buttigieg, right? And this one, the press secretary, who was a clown the whole time. Like, she was terrible. I thought that she'd get replaced, but she lasted like all the way till the end now, right? So Psaki, she was terrible. She was awful. The red hair. So people are saying, oh, Trump's cabinet picks aren't qualified, but these people are clearly ideological picks that are meant to, that weren't qualified for, or aren't qualified for their position, and they were meant to drive forward an ideological something, their ideology forward. Here is Cron, and he's highlighting this. Before you start freaking out about Pete Hegseth, let me educate you. Pete has a bachelor's from Princeton, a master's from Harvard, 2 Bronze Stars, was a major in the Army's National Guard, and served in both Iraq and Afghanistan, has a CIB, and here is his point of view. So this guy's the new Secretary of Defense in the United States. Here we go.
The Pentagon is in the book, the exact amount of years, but in the past X number of years, 10, 12, 15, the Pentagon has a perfect record in all of its war games against China. We lose every time inside the Pentagon war games. We know what our real capability. You see, we didn't even get to this part of the war on warriors. I mean, the military-industrial complex, the way we procure weapon systems. We're always, the way our system works, the way our bureaucratic system works, where the speed of weapons procurement works, we're always a decade behind in fighting the last war. Whereas China, we have, what did Rumsfeld say? You go to the war, the army you have. We have the army. China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe, and yeah, we have a nuclear triad and all of that, but a big part of it. And if 15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I mean, and if they've already got us by the balls economically, which you pointed out very well, with our grid, culturally, there's plenty of elite capture going on around the globe. I mean, and then microchips and everything. Why do they want Taiwan? They want to corner the market completely on the technological future. We can't even drive our cars without the stuff we need out of China these days. I mean, they have a full spectrum, long-term view of not just regional but global domination, and we have our heads up our asses.
Yeah.
And
in Canada too, we have more than our heads up our asses. We have no idea what's going on. Like, we have no idea. We have Chinese subs parked in just off the coast of Vancouver at the listening stations, and I think that they're listening to Washington, like Washington State and like the United States, right? But we don't know what's going on. And if we did know what's going on, well, we'd put a stop to it, right? But at this point in time, we're all lost in the dark with multiple Chinese representatives in our Canadian government. So, yay. Awakened Outlaw says, regarding Trump's nomination for ND candidate he's putting forward as his pick to be considered and confirmed by the Senate, it's important to note that these picks, such as the ones to head agencies like the FBI, Department of Justice, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, are referred to as acting or interim until they're confirmed. But don't let that lead you to believe that they don't immediately assume the duties of said position once Trump takes office, and they do so with the full authority their position entails from day one, because they do. In fact, Trump could change any one of them out at whatever point he'd like, and since we know that he loves the flexibility of acting interim directors, right, gives him in pursuit of of moving his agenda forward, we have to assume this also applies here. Keep in mind that those who come in fully aware that their role is temporary can be and are leveraged to make large-scale impactful decisions without fear of the impact those decisions would have on their career in said department or agency. This is a massive strategic advantage in play here, and I believe Trump, ever the gamesman, is 100% using his strategy here necessary to move his MAGA agenda forward. Yeah, I think that what he's doing, like by putting this guy into Homeland Security, this guy doesn't have friends in Homeland Security. This guy's not trying to buddy up and like to make a name for himself and be a career politician and 20 years and I'm gonna make it up to the Joint Chiefs or anything like that. Like his goal is not to be a bureaucrat after he's done this, as far as I can tell. His goal, he sees problems. He sees a litany of problems. He outlined a bunch of them nearly 2 minutes I showed you, and it sounds like he wants to fix them. And he doesn't really care if he's making friends or whatever. He just wants to get the outcome done, right? And like the rest will fall into place, is what I read from him. And so it seems like that's a good pick to me. And it seems like being able to be interim and like moved in and out at the will of Trump, that's a superpower, right? Because he's not encumbered by, what will people think in a few years after I've made this change? Will people like it or not like it? He doesn't give a shit. He just wants the outcome, right? So I think that's better. I think that's probably good. Brian says Trump still hasn't said anything about Rubio or who his Secretary of State pick is. And he just announced several more picks himself. What does that tell you? So there's a whole bunch of these Trump-Vance letterhead things coming out. I don't actually have one. Do I? I don't know if I have one. But there's all these Secretary of State and all these cabinet picks that are coming out through the Trump-Vance letterhead. And Rubio was announced yesterday by a lot of mainstream media, but Rubio hasn't said anything about it himself. And Trump hasn't released the Trump-Vance letterhead one talking about like the transition team and who's cabinet going to be, and he hasn't said Rubio. So it seems like, well, Victory says it tells me that Trump is trying to smoke out a leaker. So Nome got leaked because Trump's pick of Nome came out yesterday for Department of Homeland Security, I think. And so that came out yesterday and was confirmed, but Rubio's hasn't come out yet. So like that's sticks out to me. It's a red flag to me. Not a red flag, just like sticks out like a sore thumb. There's something going on with that. And people think he's trying to smoke out a leaker. So Sean's hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful